The next thing is the Patosphere, which is the set of all stories conceivable by humans. The quote being, the Patosphere is actually more concerned with causal relationships. Sorry if I've misinformed on that front, since I'm refining this theory a little more as time goes on. The Patosphere is the set of all stories conceivable by humans in a given storyline, and functionally is this universal narrative/narrative dimension of said storyline. A story is just a set of causally related events, so the Patosphere kind of defines how causality should play out in a given timeline. The Proxyverse is the place where editors reside. This is the sort of in-between universe. The SCP Wiki, aka the Proxyverse, is populated by a race of entities called editors, which are avatars that the real-world authors use to manipulate the SCP Wiki and verse. They run an infinite organization responsible for the maintenance of the SCP multiverse simulation as dictated to them by their author gods. The editors view themselves as being in service of the Swan's author/authors. The quote, the Proxyverse is inhabited by the editors, a race of fictionalized entities given life by the personas that we authors have on the wiki. There is an editor entity, Judcactus, for example, who is a facsimile of the corresponding real world author behind the name, and that entity is a creature with real agency that sees itself as a living in the Proxyverse, a facsimile universe of the SCP Wiki created from our own collective mythologizing of the SCP community. The editors see themselves as being in service to the authors who live in a layer above them and actively convey their creative intent when they post on the wiki. The editors fulfill their duty of taking all the imaginums sent by the authors and neatly organizing them into all the timelines we see in the SCP-verse, so they don't really feel the need to come up with their own ideas exactly. End quote. Finally, the Alpha Layer, which is where the Swans reside. The narrative above the Proxyverse, everything mentioned is just a part of one narrative layer within, with there being an infinite amount of narrative layers. So everything below this, the Alpha Layer, everything previously talked about in parts 1 and 2, that is just a part of one layer, one narrative layer. And the Alpha Layer, it's the layer above that, and there are infinite layers above the Alpha Layer. A quote being, the gist of this update is the incorporation of Dr. Whoever's hypercanon theory, which holds that our reality is not a single narrative bulk below the Alpha Layer, but an n-dimensional set of narrative planes connecting all at defined conceptual points, end quote. Those within the Alpha Layer see the cosmology as fiction, quote, an entity or force with access to higher energy metaphysical dimensions would perceive our reality similar to how we perceive the reality of characters in a comic book. Just how we are able to, at whim, change the story simply by telling it differently, this higher energy being would be able to effortlessly make alterations to not just local reality, but reality as a whole, altering baseline and changing its most fundamental aspects, end quote. So that, beginning of the second quote, so then, what would truly constitute a god? This entity would have to totally supersede our reality. To be able to look over our reality, not like we would over ants, but like we would look over thoughts and ideas, being so totally separate from our reality that we may as well be words on a page to it. This entity, a true author of creation, could be considered a god. End quote. The alpha layer creates the sort of functionings of the universe in the cosmology. Additionally, the narratives are stacked on top of each other, forming the narrative stack. Beyond the alpha layer, there are infinite realities, which I'm pretty sure means infinite narrative layers above that. SCP-3812 is a infamous instance of this whole there being infinite narrative layers, which is why SCP was considered so powerful. But when you look at all this other stuff, you sort of realize, yeah, no, they're way more powerful than what we've been given credit for.